So I have my code running here on the left, and you can see it's updating, right? I have an Uno card influence. I got this code from a tutorial, but I have a little bit of Uno card influence here. We have 4 what are called instructors, and they're initialized with a couple of hobbies. And then what happens as the component is updated, instructor at random is picked, and then a random hobby is removed. Now you can see all the instructors have had all their hobbies removed. So again, random instructor is picked, and then a random hobby is removed from their array of hobbies. Let's look at the code and how this is set up. So we see our app class extends component. So we have a class component in React. It immediately calls constructor with the props property. It has to do this, no choice. Then it immediately calls components constructor with props, and then it also has to do that as well. Now here, the constructor is setting up our state. And here we have the instructors, and you can see within that, that's an array of constructors in JSON, JavaScript object notation. It creates this array, which contains objects with name and hobbies property. Hobbies, in turn, is another array of strings. So here, again, the constructor sets state for the first time. It's the only method that should have state on the left-hand side of an equal sign directly. Now, our set interval timeout. Again, this is a callback method that occurs outside of the constructor, so it should be considered an autonomous method. I'm not going to dwell into the details of how this code works. It's pretty simple, really, but the details aren't that important. It picks a random instructor, it picks a random hobby index, and then this pulls that instructor, which uses the map function. It pulls out the instructor that was picked. It picks the hobbies array, which is, of course, really an object. It copies it, makes a deep copy now, right? Deep copy. It's working on a shallow copy. It makes a deep copy of only the hobbies array. And then it modifies it by using splice. It removes one element of that array and then sets that array into the object. So this instructors object, most of it is left untouched with each call. So suppose Colt is picked as the random instructor, and then CSS is picked as the random hobby to remove. The hobbies is made a deep copy of that object, which is an array. It's made a deep copy, then this is removed, and then this is updated, and then finally set state is called. So there's no touching directly of any of these shallow copies. That's really important, okay? Now, I'm going to modify this code a little bit, and I'm going to make a case that my code is so much better. So here's my updated code. I really uncommented out some code I had before. Okay. So now I'm going to use instructors object. So I read this .state instructors. Remember, I can read it. I can't write to it. And I use Lodash's clone deep method to make a brand new copy of the entire state object. Then I use my random instructor index and my random hobby index and splice that one. Then I call set state on it directly. So rather than, let's say, targeting a specific object buried within this object to make a deep copy of and then updating it, I make a deep copy of the entire thing. And I'm going to argue that's way more practical. Suppose you're updating 3 or 4 aspects of this state. Code like this can become rapidly very complicated, right? Where you're targeting individual objects, also error prone. It's so easy to accidentally touch a shallow copy. This makes that impossible. And it doesn't matter that I can modify and make more complicated this state object, and Clone Deep will automatically find it and copy it. I don't have to think about it. And when I don't have to think about it, I have much less chance for bugs. Now, when wouldn't you want to do this? If this state object is really complicated and really big, right? So that copying the whole thing is just too wasteful. Now, I'm going to argue that would happen very rarely, right? Components by their nature should be relatively small, and the state object, therefore, be relatively small as well. Certainly there are exceptions, right? Let's suppose this hobbies array was absolutely huge, right? Thousands and thousands and thousands of hobbies. Deep copying that, it's expensive. But again, in most cases, I think you can make a deep copy of the entire thing, modify it, and then call set state. And your code becomes this from this, and potentially way more complicated if you're just if you're targeting specific things to deep copy. Okay. So that shows all the principles and my recommendations for handling state. Thank you.